Why did Don Corleone's most trusted and close personal friend end up betraying the heir to the Corleone family, Don Michael Corleone? Tessio was one of the most important members in the Corleone Mafia family, playing a critical role since its inception, and whose talent were used by Don Vito to build the Corleone empire. In the film, Vito warns Michael that
whoever comes to you with this Barzini meeting, he's the traitor. Don't forget that.
And just as he predicted, Michael was approached exactly in that way, but unfortunately it turned out to be one of the most important individuals in the family. Many people have been asking a lot of different questions about this situation, as well as questions about the caporegime himself, Salvatore Tessio, which we will uncover. However, we will be mainly focusing on more intriguing aspects such as, how did Don Vito know with full certainty that all this would happen? How did the Don use the philosophy of the infamous Niccolo Machiavelli to his advantage and warn his son Michael about what to expect? So, even though most of us already have a pretty clear picture of exactly how everything happened, we will mainly focusing on and diving into the Don's brain and analyzing his thinking process. And hopefully we could all learn and somehow benefit from this.
You see, all our people are businessmen. Their loyalty is based on that.
To start with, Vito didn't know exactly who would approach Michael, rather he understood the game and knew how people around him think. So the real question is, how did Vito predict this was going to happen? This generally translates into real life, whether in the Mafia or even the modern-day workplace. People's loyalty and priorities will always be held above anything else until they find a better opportunity. So as a leader, especially in the world of the Mafia, where loyalty to the Don is only held through fear and the fact they know they will benefit from the power, security and money that obeying the Don gives them. However, if they find someone else more powerful or greed reaches the point that they think they could overthrow the Don and take over, they will definitely do so. Therefore, it's usually justified as not being personal, rather strictly business.
Tell Mike it was only business. I always liked him.
Something that Vito had instilled in Michael, and something he would have to learn the hard way, was that no matter who it is, people will always put their self-interests above loyalty, which is why Vito emphasized the role of family, as he believed that bond could not be broken. He understood that once he is gone, the seat of power will be vacant, open for someone to take over. Even though he has been building and supporting Michael to take over the family, he knew that the loyalty of his men may not transfer to his son. Especially as he understood human nature. Especially after seeing how they were receiving Michael as the acting Don, and how they immediately were looking to move away from the family.
Mike, you're wrong. Don Corleone, you once said that the day would come when Tessio and me could form our own family. Till today, I would never think of it. I must ask your permission.
Although fairly subtle, this is probably the most obvious sign the Don knew that some of his men are not too happy or supportive, and when given the chance, as loyal as they were to him, they wouldn't extend the same loyalty to his son. We saw how much he trusted, and how highly he regarded with Tessio and Clemenza. They were his most trusted men, and the ones that for years had been standing alongside him, building the empire. But even so, Vito always took precautions that even with the extremely low chance of betrayal, he would always be one step ahead, guaranteeing that no one could ever think to overthrow him. An example of this is shown after Vito had become the powerful Don, following his victory in the Olive Oil War. He gave both Tessio and Clemenza a regime and a large territory. However, he made sure they were both disconnected and completely separated, always having to go through him. In addition, he told them to never even interact socially out in public. Any interaction between the two would be in the presence of the Don or in rare occasions. This is so they could not collaborate and scheme against him. The Don was insulated from any chance of betrayal. But what's interesting is that even with all this, Vito trusted Tessio more than Clemenza. Why do you think that was the case? It seems that Tessio was generally more intelligent and just overall more straightforward than Clemenza. In addition, he later proved himself to be a better general in conflict. In fact, from a strategic standpoint, as mentioned by Michael, it was the smart move to make. The reason for this is because from their point of view, Michael was a weak leader, and having him take over the family would mean that they would not be able to reclaim their territories or position they once had. Therefore, negotiating with the much more powerful Don Barzini, a deal where they can end the hostilities and at least come out with something, let alone what remains of the Corleone Empire.
One thing I learned from Pop was to try to think as people around you think.
So why was one of the most loyal friends in capo regimes end up being the one who would betray the family? Well, there are actually a few reasons. In the novel, it's made clear that Michael was extremely distraught that it was Tessio who was the traitor, not just because of the personal friendship or anything of the sort, but because he was such a crucial member of the Corleone family. He had been responsible for some of the family's most important victories, he was an extremely powerful asset, and finding out that he was the traitor means that they lose his expertise, as he has dug his own grave. And to really summarize the reason for someone like Tessio, or anyone for that matter, to even think about, let alone actually betray Michael, was the fact Michael was not feared. And this perfectly encapsulates this scenario. The longtime loyal member of the Corleone family, someone who had an integral role in building the empire, but furthermore, someone with a personal connection to Michael, and seemed to genuinely love Michael, he did not fear him, therefore, as Machiavelli states, as soon as danger approaches he would turn against him, and that's exactly what happened. After the Barzinis began chipping away at their territories, losing their power and money, Tessio and Clemenza asked for vengeance, but Michael ordered them to wait. This clearly did not sit well with either one, and Vito and Michael could see that. In the end, Tessio began plotting against Michael. At Don Corleone's funeral, Tessio arranged for Michael's assassination at a peace summit set up by Emilio Barzini, who had become the strongest Don in New York. The summit was to be held on Tessio's territory in Brooklyn, where Michael would supposedly be safe. In return, Tessio would inherit the Corleone family. However, Michael had anticipated the plot by way of a warning from his father, who stated that the person who would approach him about the peace deal would be the traitor.
Whoever comes to you with this Barzini meeting, he's the traitor. Don't forget that.
Tom initially thought the traitor would be Clemenza, but Michael was not surprised, since Tessio was always the smarter one. Some people question if Barzini was the one who had approached Tessio, similar to how he did with Paulie or even Carlo. However, this was definitely not the case with Tessio. Rather, Tessio himself went and approached Barzini to strike a deal. As Barzini wouldn't target someone that high up, as it could uncover his plot, rather Barzini knew he just needed to wait until Vito's death, and the seemingly weak and inexperienced Michael Corleone to take over, in which will then begin the final collapse of the Corleone family, where he can finally bury his biggest opponents once and for all. As Barzini could have been playing Tessio as well, he could have promised him to take over what would remain of the Corleone family, however than just take him out, as he now knows that if Tessio was willing to betray his own family, the people who he had served for years, he definitely would not be loyal to someone who he once considered an enemy. Another question some people have been asking was whether Tessio had been working with outsiders prior to this event, and again the answer is absolutely no. Tessio had been extremely loyal to his Don and the family, and he was the Don's go-to capo for important matters. We never do get to see in the films, or in the main novel however, we do get a glimpse of what happened in the later novels. As Tessio and Hagen were preparing to attend the summit, Willie Chichi told him that Michael was coming in a separate car. Tessio was visibly upset, saying that it threw off his so-called arrangements. Hagen says he can't come along either, while Chichi and several of Clemenza's men surround Tessio. Realizing that Michael has found out about his treachery, Tessio asked Tom to tell Michael that it was only business, and he always liked him. Tessio then asked Tom if he could get him off the hook for old time's sake. Tom regretfully rejected his appeal. Willie Chichi and a few other men drove Tessio to Two Toms, his very own social club, where his traitorous men were executed. Tessio and his dead co-conspirators were then brought to an abandoned gas station on Staten Island, where he was executed by his former protege Nick Geraci, while El Neri looked on. His death was attributed to the Barzini family, since Staten Island was their territory, which explained the death of Don Barzini at the same time. Tessio's wife and his children were provided for by the Corleones after his death. Thank you for joining the Culture Mafia.